Hey everyone, welcome to my Procreate demo for the piece I called Tank. So it's been a bit since I've posted, I apologize for that. I've been sort of all over the place. I sort of had a lot of different pieces up and running, so you're going to see a lot of videos coming soon. I had one particular thing that took a really long time to work on, but for this, just to sort of get back into the groove, I wanted to share with you a slightly experimental piece I did. Definitely not experimental in terms of subject matter, but definitely in terms of the way I built it. So you can see here the rough sketch stage. I sketched with my usual fat pencil. It's sort of what I do everything in these days, and I've even incorporated it into certain aspects of the painting process. Here I'm just sort of feeling around. I don't know at all really what I want to do. To be honest, at this point I don't even remember what I was like watching or listening to, so the inspiration for this was probably just coming from some random place. So just really playing with shapes and seeing if I want to do something kind of wacky or do something where I'm just pushing proportions. And so where I end up is with this sketch. This sketch is the one that sort of makes it into the final piece, and you can see just sort of it's just basically a girl who slowly sort of manifests over time. And where the experimental stuff comes in is actually after the rough sketch is done, I think to myself, like, man, the mountain of going through just like cleaning it up and then deciding what I'm going to do with it. What if we actually tried to keep it a little bit looser and just ran with that? Definitely far from the first artist to ever do that, but if you follow this channel or you follow my Instagram or anything else, you know that that's not something I do very often. So this isn't a comfort zone. So in order to try and combat that, I just merge a couple of techniques here or there to try and get there. I did a piece a long time ago. I actually forgot what the name of it is, but if you'll see it somewhere in my history, it's like the girl with blackish brownish hair and it's covering her eyes and she's got like crazy big lips. There's actually some similarities to what I did there and what I did here, which is I just, after doing the sketch, started putting some fuzzy flats in to try and figure out where this whole thing was going to go, that's what I did with that, and that's sort of what I'm doing here, except instead of using like the fuzzy airbrush, I actually don't remember what brush I used. In fact, it's not even important what brush I used. The point is I just sort of picked one and I started pushing it around to see sort of what it would do for me. Every now and then you'll see I might switch to the airbrush in order to try and like fuzz stuff up a little bit and maybe add some sort of a blurry aspect to it. But really all I'm doing is trying to use messy brushes to try and do like the flats process. I usually love drawing attention to the eyes of a character with various tricks and techniques. In this one, what I figured I would do is that the eyes would be sort of the tightest rendered thing across the entire piece. So she, it's still not the cleanest thing I've ever done, but you'll notice that the eyes ultimately get a lot more work done to them than any other portion of it. So at this point, I'm very messily just running through it like I normally would, putting in flats. If I were going to take this to paint it, I would sort of go through this process as well. So that's sort of what I'm doing here. Now after I've got the skin in, and I've got her shirt in, and I've got her hair and eyes and all that, I'm going in and doing some of the normal tricks that I do, where I'm adding some color to the lips and the cheeks and the nose and the ears and all that kind of stuff. So you can see here with the eyes got a lot of work right there. And so I zoomed in just so you could see that, but now we're moving into the lighting source. So obviously this isn't the way I normally work. I've sort of established a bit of a darkish mid-tone, and then I'm coming in with a light source somewhere behind her. And this is all done with just an overlay layer that has, I think it's set to a bit of a whitish orangey sort of color, and I'm not going through this with any type of specific purpose where like my process is hyper clean. You can see here that I'm fucking that part up, and then I'm going to go back in and redo it, which is right there. The original color that I used for the shadow was a little bit different too, and then you can see that like I tweak and lighten that, and I'm really feeling my way through this one. I know that there's plenty of artists out there that's the way they do a lot of things, but that's not the way I normally work. So for this, it's about sort of doing some stuff and feeling around, and does this feel right, and then analyzing the piece and saying, oh no, actually I should do this and I should add that, and this needs a little bit more. And usually I'm much more clinical with the way that I actually execute the colors of a piece. So at this point, I'm doing just a couple adjustments here or there. I'm really trying to see, like, with this, when you've got something that's this simple with this simple a subject matter, you are just trying to make sure that that one simple figure has everything that it needs in order to really sing. So it can be a little bit stressful, and you don't necessarily nail it, but that's sort of what I'm combating here when I'm sort of looking at it. Now, the other thing that I did on this that I do with everything is after I finished it at night, I just slept on it, and then the next day I came back to it. And that's, I think, a really good thing, because you have a lot of momentum towards the end of the piece, and it's nice to sort of put it away and think about it and come back to it after the fact. So now we're just going to add a couple of last little bit rendering tweaks here. I think the recording sort of punked out on me, but anyways, right now we're going to go from the final piece of this into an actual explanation of my Procreate file so that you all can see exactly what I decided to do with the file setup. You can see here we have the line layer. Obviously I didn't name everything because I was working really quick and messy, but there's the line layer. Lower that back down to the 8% that it's at, and so it's just a mess, which is why I sort of wanted to point out specifically how the file's laid out. And I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible so that the screen recording doesn't fail on me, because it's a little touchy. So let's get going. So anyways, if you look way down here, the very first thing that I did once I had the rough sketch was I started working in the skin. You can see it's kind of a mess right there. It's just messy. Like that was sort of the whole point when I was going through this. And then somewhere in here is the tank top. There's the tank top, and then I have her eye. So that's not even her eye. That's her pearl. There we go. Eye, and then eyelashes and eyebrows and hair. So you can see this is all a crazy mess. And you saw during the video when I was working on it, the lines weren't necessarily this light the entire time, but that's just sort of the way it went. And then we've got the hair behind her. And then you can see the background. When that all gets turned on, which is all of that right there, you can see it fills in and starts pulling into a lot of the colors that are in the sort of, I guess you could call them flats, but they're certainly not flats. They're not very clean in that way. So then the rest of the layer is, there's that thing that sort of separates the face from the hair in the back. Let's zoom in on the eyes for a second so you can just see the rest of the eye setup. So we've got the bounce light, and we've got the irises, and then we've got the sort of like the pupil and then the shadow. We've got the eye meat. There's the eyelashes again, and that is the eyes as far as like this stage is concerned. So then we go back through and turn everything else on. So I've got like a blurred duplication of the lines. We've got that pearl flat. We've got this, which is, oh right, it's the lightening of the skin. And then we've got lips. We've got this sort of vague shading, the shadowing on the distant side of her. We've got the sort of like sun-kissed aspects, and then we've got this sort of subsurface scattering kind of, but it looks like shit right now because I'm not showing it to you in the linear way in which I painted it. You see that in the previous section, but that technically gets turned on. And then I believe layer 54 here, right there, is off actually. It's not in the final piece. So that's all that folder. It's sort of a really weird section. You can see right there. Then we move into the next folder, which has like all of the changes basically. So you see here we've got this broad shadow layer just to create the dark side of her. Then we have a slightly more intense shadow for doing all of the really tight sections where it's going to be darker. You can see based on the thumbnail that they're two different colors. And then we've got this rim of light that sort of goes down the right side of her, which is an add layer that's set to, well, 98%. I'm sure that was just an accident. And then the normal color is that, and then it's set to add. Then we've got this overlay layer and then this overlay layer, just to obviously make all of that much more intense. Then we have this overpaint layer where I'm just going in and I'm putting in tons of extra details. So these are all merged together into one big thing, which if you follow my previous videos, you know that that's strange for me. So let's zoom in on it just so we can see. Come down here at the bottom first. You can see that it's creating some extra depth by having her sort of blend into her background. I put an extra highlight on her left boob there to catch some of the light that might be coming around her arm. And then we've got this slight darkening where her like armpit is, and then we've got a little bit of shine on her shoulder, right there. And then let's pull out and look at the face. You can see that by toggling this on and off, whoops, wrong layer. Toggling this on and off, we've got like a lot more definition in the eye and the eyelashes, shine on the cheek, shine on the nose ridge, shine on the lips, some extra shadowing in there for the ear, and then we've got like even like the wetness of the eye right there is a part of this. So you can see this is just one big sort of adjustment detail layer. Next one up. A lot more adjustments, all eye-centric for the most part, but you can see that getting toggled on there. So let's break down what this really means. I'm gonna try and speed up because I feel like I'm already running the risk with the screen recording. So here you can see we added a little bit more brightness into the irises and some of the reflection on the inside. Then we've got the shine on her pearl, which is just white, pure white. Then we've got a light glare in her eye. We've got some glare from sort of like environment bouncing up into her eye. Then we have the broader reflection that that light shine is a part of. Then we've got some hair shine, which is what this is. And then we've got a rim light, a fairly soft rim light that's coming from the environment. And then we have even further intensifying of that backlight, which is just, it's all bloomed out essentially in the key areas. So just to recap, if we turn that layer off, this is what she looks like, or that folder. And if we turn off the adjustments, that's what she looks like. And if we turn off all the shadows, that's what she looks like. So you can see that, I know there's lots of little layers in there, but you can sort of see the mentality of what's happening in each one of these folders. You can take something really far. So working backwards now, let's get it all turned back on. Now, I had a weird mistake that actually worked out for me. You can see when I turn this on, some of that rim light gets a little bit better. It gets a little softer in areas. That's because that's actually an old version of the image that I was using, and I blurred it out and was messing with it, and then I decided to just leave it there. Then we've got the signature layer, and then we've got this last bit of adjustments because I didn't like exactly how messy things were. In fact, I won't even go into all of those. Those are just separate paintings. If you look at her nose here, you can see the state that it's in there, and then I turn it on, and her lip, and it cleans up a little bit. Now, you could probably argue that that could have stayed as rough as it was and it would have been fine, but by turning it on and you can see the slight cleanliness there, it sort of brings the lip and the nose into the finished quality of the eye, and it sort of makes the whole central face feel like it works together. Last but not least, we've got a noise layer across the entire thing, and we've got the color adjustment layer, which is that right there. And then I duplicate all of that and then add a little bit of a blur to it. And a little bit of a, excuse me, this doesn't have a blur, I'm sorry. This doesn't have a blur. This has a value adjustment. It's super minor. I'm toggling it right now. You might not be able to see it, but it's there. So I hope that the insight into this Procreate file, since this was a very different way of building it, helps sort of show how I might experiment with a new look. And that's the final piece. I hope to do a lot more experimental stuff in the future, so I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and if you did enjoy it, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.